My best friend became jealous of me because I started getting better grades than her, so she pranked me by fake culling my puppy. I went to extremes to get my revenge and cut her off entirely. Years later, she reached out begging for forgiveness. In senior year, I was going to graduate as valedictorian. Everyone was happy for me, except for my best friend Vanessa, because in ninth grade, she would get better grades than me by barely studying. She understood Algebra 1 immediately and got 100% in the test. Meanwhile, I barely passed. I always looked up to her, thinking she was the smartest girl in the world. I was inspired by her and wanted to be like her. So during the summer, I studied hard. I made out a schedule of what I would do every day to be as smart as her, and I did my best to stick to it. By the time 10th grade came around, I was acing all the practice tests. And since my parents were emotionally absent alcoholics, Vanessa stepped up as my emotional support. She told me she'd always be there for me until I got moved to her honors class, and instead of giving any sort of encouragement, she just laughed. She actually accused me of cheating on the tests, saying there must have been some kind of mistake because there's no way I could be in her class. She even called me a bad friend, telling me that I know how much this means to her, so being in her class was taking away from her achievement. And because I was young and easily manipulated, I felt tears sting my eyes. That night, I lied awake in bed, blaming myself for stealing her spotlight. And so I came up with a solution to my problem. I started trying to perform badly in tests. I thought I was doing the right thing, until disaster struck. I had studied so much in summer that my grades were still better than hers. Actually, they were the best in the class. I tried to tell Vanessa I wasn't doing it on purpose, and even offered to help her study, but she lashed out. Every time she received a test that was lower than mine, she'd manipulate me, calling me a bad friend and threatening our friendship. I remember one specific test. I forced myself to barely pass, but she failed. I thought that now at least she'd see I wasn't trying to one-up her. But then the next day, I found out she sent fake screenshots to the teacher of me saying I cheated to get where I was. My teacher believed it, and to verify it, they forced me into a room and made me do 4 tests back to back, with no time to prep. Well, I did really well in every single one of them, getting above 80. Vanessa was red with anger. Even the teacher was so impressed he told me if I kept it up, I could be going to Harvard. I don't even know how Vanessa found out, but she did. And because she was on the student council, she ended up taking advantage of me. It wasn't even a slow escalation of events. Straight away, she told everyone I was sleeping with the assistant principal for higher grades, but because I was still ugly back then, no one even believed her. But instead of giving up, she tried even harder. Which is funny, because if she spent half the effort on ruining my life to instead improve her grades, maybe she'd be the one on her way to Harvard. Anyway, from 9th to 12th grade, she reported me for plagiarism, tried sabotaging my college applications, and even tried to burn my textbooks the week before a big exam. But instead of making me cry, it actually made me happy, because I stopped seeing her as my golden best friend who could do no wrong, and started seeing her for what she was, a jealous psycho beach. But then, when I thought she had done her worst, I was wrong. It was 12th grade, and I had flown home from a holiday and drove to school straight from the airport. I got to my locker, and this awful stench filled my nostrils. I even vomited in my mouth a little. I started to open my locker door, and everything immediately clicked, because inside was the unalived body of my puppy. I screamed, and when I turned around in shock, I was faced with a phone camera. Behind it was Vanessa, pointing and laughing at me. "You should have seen your face!" Mascara was streaming down my face. I fell to the floor and didn't even have enough strength to push her phone camera away. I packed my bag and went home early, but as soon as I got back, I realized I overreacted. My puppy was still alive. You see, Vanessa had somehow found an unalived one that looked identical to mine and used it to prank me. But even though she hadn't done it, the image of the puppy's skeleton was still burned into my memory. I knew I had a decision to make, one that would not only change my life, but also the life of Vanessa and anyone else who tried to bully me. I don't have time to finish the story in this short video, but it gets intense. So I'm sitting there in my room, staring at the wall and thinking about how to handle the situation with Vanessa. My hands were still shaking from discovering the dead animal in my locker. I grabbed my laptop and started researching animal cruelty laws in our state. Turns out this wasn't just mean girl behavior, it was actually illegal. I screenshotted everything and saved it to a special folder named Evidence. I called my cousin Mark, who was studying pre-law at community college. He confirmed what I suspected. This was a serious offense that could get Vanessa expelled or worse. I spent the whole night making a detailed plan. First thing next morning, I went to school early and asked to speak with Principal Carson. I showed him the video Vanessa had taken of me breaking down by my locker. His face went from confused to horrified in seconds. He immediately called in the school resource officer, Officer Perez. I had to tell the whole story again while Officer Perez took notes. They asked me to wait outside while they called Vanessa to the office. I sat on that hard plastic chair watching the minutes tick by on the wall clock. 20 minutes later, I heard screaming from inside the office. Vanessa burst out, mascara streaming down her face, completely losing it. She lunged at me right there in front of the secretary's desk. "You ruined everything!" She managed to scratch my face before Officer Perez pulled her away. I touched my cheek and my fingers came away with blood. The secretary handed me tissues while looking horrified. Principal Carson suspended Vanessa on the spot and told her parents to come pick her up immediately. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, Vanessa's parents showed up at school with a lawyer. They claimed I had been bullying their daughter for years and fabricated the whole locker incident. I couldn't believe they were turning this around on me. Principal Carson called me back to his office where Vanessa sat smugly between her parents and their sleazy-looking attorney. "Elaine has maintained excellent grades and character throughout her time here," Principal Carson started. "These accusations seem completely out of character." Vanessa's mom interrupted. "My daughter would never hurt an animal. Elaine is clearly troubled and jealous of Vanessa's success." I almost laughed out loud at the absurdity. Officer Perez cleared his throat and pulled out his phone. "We have the video evidence that Vanessa herself recorded," he said, pressing play. The color drained from their faces as they watched their daughter laughing while filming my breakdown. The lawyer whispered something to them, but Vanessa's dad waved him off. After that meeting, things moved quickly. The school board got involved. Animal control was called to properly dispose of the dead animal from my locker. Vanessa received a 30-day suspension and mandatory counseling. Her college acceptance letters were now at risk due to the disciplinary action. Part of me felt satisfied, but mostly I just felt tired. I threw myself even harder into studying for finals. With Vanessa gone, the The school felt different. People who I thought were her friends started sitting with me at lunch. Turns out they'd been afraid of her too. One girl named Amelia confessed that Vanessa had threatened to spread rumors about her if she ever talked to me. Another guy, Jaden, told me Vanessa had stolen his physics notes before a big exam because he'd offered to help me study. I was discovering just how many lives she'd tried to control. I started hanging out with Amelia and her friends. We formed a study group for finals. For the first time, I had real friends who weren't trying to compete with or manipulate me. My grades stayed strong without the constant stress of Vanessa's mind games. When Vanessa finally returned to school, she was different. She kept her head down and didn't look anyone in the eye. She'd lost her perfect ponytail and designer clothes, showing up in hoodies with unwashed hair. I almost felt sorry for her until I caught her staring at me across the cafeteria with pure hatred in her eyes. I knew she wasn't done. I was right. A week before graduation, my Harvard acceptance letter mysteriously disappeared from my locker. I'd been keeping it there to read whenever I needed motivation. I immediately suspected Vanessa. I went to the administrative office and asked Ms. Payton if the security cameras covered the hallway by my locker. She checked and confirmed they did. We reviewed the footage from that morning, and sure enough, there was Vanessa, slipping something out of my locker between classes. I reported it to Principal Carson, who called Vanessa in immediately. She denied everything at first, but when shown the footage, she broke down crying. Principal Carson gave her an ultimatum: return my acceptance letter or face expulsion 2 weeks before graduation. She returned it that afternoon, crumpled but intact. I smoothed it out and put it in a frame for safekeeping at home. Graduation day arrived with perfect June weather. My parents actually showed up sober, which was a small miracle in itself. As valedictorian, I had to give a speech. I spent weeks working on it, determined to take the high road. When I walked up to the podium and saw hundreds of faces looking back at me, I felt a surge of confidence I'd never experienced before. I spotted Vanessa in the crowd, sitting alone, her parents nowhere to be seen. I started my speech talking about perseverance and growth. I never mentioned Vanessa by name, but I did talk about overcoming obstacles and not letting others define your worth. After the ceremony, several teachers came up to congratulate me. Harvard was sending a representative to award me an additional scholarship based on my academic performance. As photos were being taken, I noticed Vanessa standing alone by the refreshment table. On impulse, I walked over to her. She looked surprised, then suspicious. "What do you want?" she asked. I just shrugged and said, "I wanted to say congratulations on graduating." Her face softened for a split second before hardening again. "Whatever. You think you're so special with your Harvard scholarship?" I could have snapped back, but instead I just smiled and said, "Good luck at college, Vanessa." Walking away felt like closing a chapter. That summer flew by as I prepared for Harvard. I got a part-time job at the local library and saved every penny. My parents' drinking got worse after graduation. They seemed almost angry about my success. One night I came home to find them passed out surrounded by empty bottles. I packed an overnight bag and stayed at Amelia's house. Her parents were kind and supportive, letting me crash on their couch whenever things got bad at home. 2 weeks before leaving for college, I received a strange email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line simply said, "Sorry." The message was short: "I'm getting help now. What I did was wrong. I can't undo it, but I'm trying to be better." It wasn't signed, but I knew it was from Vanessa. I didn't respond. Some apologies come too late. Move-in day at Harvard was overwhelming. The campus was beautiful and intimidating. My roommate Alina was from California and seemed nice enough. We awkwardly arranged our sides of the room while our parents made small talk. My dad kept checking his watch, eager to hit the road. They left within an hour, barely saying goodbye. Alina's parents stayed until evening, helping her hang fairy lights and arrange photos on her wall. They invited me to join them for dinner, but I declined. I needed some time alone. That night, lying in my new bed in my new life, I felt both terrified and free. Classes started and immediately challenged me in ways high school never had. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who were all as smart or smarter than me. No one cared that I was valedictorian. I was just another freshman trying to find my way. I joined the debate team and started making friends who knew nothing about my history with Vanessa. Over winter break, I decided not to go home. I couldn't face my parents drinking and the empty house. Instead, I stayed with Alina's family in California. They welcomed me like I was their own daughter. Christmas morning, I woke up to actual presents with my name on them. I almost cried opening them. Thoughtful gifts from people who barely knew me but showed more care than my own parents ever had. When spring semester started, I declared my major in psychology with a focus on adolescent development. Something about understanding why people like Vanessa become who they are fascinated me. During sophomore year, I got an email from Principal Carson. He was checking in on his former students and wanted to let me know Vanessa had dropped out of college. She'd had some kind of breakdown and was now in a treatment facility. I felt no satisfaction at this news, just a hollow sadness for the wasted potential. I threw myself into my studies even harder. By junior year, I was working as a research assistant for a prominent psychology professor. We were studying the effects of competitive pressure on teenage girls. The irony wasn't lost on me. During spring break, I finally went home to clear out my childhood bedroom. My parents had separated, and the house was being sold. As I packed up books and old notebooks, I found photos of Vanessa and me from middle school, before the competition destroyed our friendship. We looked so young and happy. I sat on my bedroom floor surrounded by the artifacts of my past life, and allowed myself to cry for the friendship we'd lost. Back at Harvard, I applied for a summer internship at a youth counseling center. During my interview, they asked why I wanted to work with troubled teens. I told them my story, leaving out names but sharing the experience of being bullied by my former best friend. The interviewer nodded and said, "Sometimes our deepest wounds become our greatest strengths." I got the internship. My first day, I was assigned to observe a group therapy session for girls with behavioral issues. When I walked in, I froze. Sitting in the circle was Lydia, a girl who looked so much like teenage Vanessa that my heart started racing. She had the same confident posture, the same dismissive expression. Throughout the session, I watched as Lydia put down the other girls with subtle jabs disguised as compliments. After the session, I discussed my observations with the lead therapist. "Lydia reminds me of someone I used to know," I said carefully. "She's struggling with some deep insecurities," the therapist explained. "The superiority is just a mask. We're Working with these girls over the summer changed something fundamental in me. I started seeing Vanessa differently, not as a villain in my story, but as another damaged person who never got the help she needed until it was too late. During my senior year, I focused my thesis on competitive behavior in academic settings and how it affects female friendships. My professor was impressed enough to suggest publishing it in an academic journal. Graduation approached, and this time my mother came alone. She'd been sober for 6 months, a small victory, but one I was grateful for. As we sat at dinner the night before commencement, she surprised me by saying, "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you in high school. I was so lost in my own problems. I didn't know how to respond, so I just nodded and squeezed her hand." The commencement ceremony was beautiful. Sitting among my fellow graduates, I felt a sense of accomplishment that went beyond academic success. I had survived Vanessa's bullying, my parents' alcoholism, and the pressure of Harvard. I had built a life I was proud of. After throwing our caps in the air, I spotted my mother chatting with Alina's parents. They had all come to support me. As I walked toward them, someone tapped my shoulder. I turned around and almost stumbled backward. It was Vanessa. She looked different, healthier, calmer. "Congratulations," she said simply. "Your mom told my mom you were graduating today." I stood frozen, unsure how to respond. "I'm not here to cause trouble," she continued. I wanted to see you succeed." She handed me a small wrapped package. "You don't have to open it now, or ever, really." I took it wordlessly. "I'm doing better now," she said. 2 years of intensive therapy and the right medication. Turns out I have borderline personality disorder along with some other issues. I nodded, finding my voice. "I'm glad you're getting help." She smiled sadly. "Well, I should go. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." She turned to leave but paused. "Oh, and I'm starting community college in the fall. Psychology, actually. Guess you influenced me after all." As I watched her walk away, I felt the weight of our shared history shift slightly. Back at my apartment that night, I carefully opened her package. Inside was a framed photo of us from 8th grade, arms around each other, grinning wildly after winning the science fair together. With it was a note: "Before competition ruined us. I'm sorry I couldn't celebrate your success back then. I'm trying to learn how now." I placed the frame on my bookshelf next to my Harvard diploma, reminders of where I'd been and how far I'd come. A week later, I started my new job at a research facility studying educational psychology. My first project focused on creating healthier competitive environments in schools. During a team meeting, I shared some of my personal experiences without mentioning names. My supervisor seemed particularly interested in how academic pressure had affected my friendship with Vanessa. "Would you be comfortable developing this into a case study?" she asked. I hesitated, then nodded. "Actually, I've been thinking about reaching out to her. Getting her perspective might make the research more complete." That weekend, I sent Vanessa an email explaining the project and asking if she'd be willing to be interviewed. I didn't expect a response, but she replied within hours. "I'd be happy to help. It might be therapeutic for both of us." We arranged to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our cities. Seeing her in a normal setting felt surreal after everything we'd been through. We started awkwardly, but as I asked my research questions, the conversation became easier. She was surprisingly insightful about her past behavior. "I always felt like I had to be the best, or I was nothing," she explained. "When you started doing better than me, it felt like you were taking my only value away." I nodded, understanding in a way I couldn't have in high school. "What about the dead animal incident?" I finally asked. "How do you make sense of that now?" She closed her eyes briefly. "That was my rock bottom. I was so desperate to hurt you that I became someone I didn't recognize. I still have nightmares about it." Our interview lasted 3 hours. By the end, we weren't exactly friends, but we weren't enemies either. We were two people trying to understand our shared past from an adult perspective. As we were leaving, she asked if we could stay in touch. I surprised myself by agreeing. Over the next few months, Vanessa occasionally sent me articles related to my research. I kept her updated on how the case study was developing. It was a careful, professional relationship, nothing like our intense teenage friendship, but healing in its own way. My case study was published in an educational psychology journal. With both our names listed, Vanessa had agreed to be named. A week after publication, I received a job offer from a prestigious private school in New York. They wanted me to develop a program addressing competitive stress and bullying in high-achieving environments. I accepted immediately. Moving to New York was exciting and terrifying. The school environment triggered some old anxieties at first. Walking those hallways, I sometimes felt like my teenage self again, insecure and watchful. But now I was the authority figure, the one creating change. My program started small, weekly discussion groups where students could talk about academic pressure without judgment. It gradually expanded to include parent workshops and teacher training. 6 months into the job, I received an email from Vanessa. She'd been accepted to a master's program in counseling psychology and wanted to know if she could interview me for a paper she was writing. We arranged a video call, and as her face appeared on my screen, I realized something important. We would always be connected by our past, but that connection no longer had power over me. Her research focused on reconciliation after intense peer conflicts. The irony made both of us smile. As we wrapped up the interview, she said something that stayed with me. "You know, in a weird way, I think we both ended up exactly where we needed to be because of what happened between us." She was right. My entire career path had been shaped by our toxic friendship and its aftermath. I was helping students because I understood their struggles intimately. That night, I looked through old high school photos, remembering the girl I had been, so desperate for Vanessa's approval, so eager to dim my own light to make her comfortable. I barely recognized that version of myself anymore. The following semester, my program received recognition from the State Educational Board. They asked me to present at their annual conference. As I prepared my presentation, I decided to include our story, mine and Vanessa's, as a personal case study. I emailed her asking permission, which she granted immediately. The day of the conference arrived, and as I walked onto the stage, I spotted Vanessa sitting in the back row. I hadn't known she was coming. Our eyes met briefly, and she gave me a small, encouraging nod. I took a deep breath and began my presentation. Today, I want to talk about competitive academic environments and their impact impact on student relationships. I'll start with a personal story, one about two girls who let competition destroy their friendship and the unexpected ways they found healing. After the presentation, several educators approached with questions. Vanessa waited patiently until the crowd dispersed. "That was really powerful," she said. "Thanks for telling our story with such fairness." We went for coffee afterward, comparing notes on our respective programs. She was working with at-risk teenagers in a community center, using her own experiences to connect with them. Before parting, she hesitated, then asked, "Do you think we could collaborate on something someday? Maybe combine your research with my counseling approach?" I found myself nodding. "I'd like that." 3 years later, we published our first book together, Competitive Damage: Healing Academic Trauma in High-Achieving Environments. It became required reading in several education programs. We still weren't best friends. Too much had happened for that. But we'd found a way to transform our painful history into something helpful for others. Looking back now, I realized that the day I found that dead animal in my locker wasn't just the breaking point of our friendship, it was the beginning of both our healing journeys. Sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most important growth. Vanessa and I were proof of that. Our story didn't end with revenge or victory. It ended with something more complicated and ultimately more meaningful. Two damaged people finding ways to help others avoid the same pain. And in doing so, we finally helped ourselves. After high school, Vanessa and I both took different paths. I enrolled at State University with a psychology major. She went to community college 3 towns over. We didn't speak for almost 2 years. The distance felt necessary for both of us. I spent my freshman year trying to forget our history. My dorm roommate never knew about my past. I made new friends who saw me as normal. The nightmares about the dead rat still came sometimes. They were less frequent as months passed. I joined a campus group for mental health awareness. We organized support sessions for students with anxiety. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was still dealing with my own issues. My therapist said helping others was part of my healing. She called it post-traumatic growth during our sessions. I didn't fully believe it at first. Then I noticed small changes in myself. I could talk about high school without shaking. The panic attacks stopped coming after crowded lectures. I even made it through an entire semester without crying in public. Progress felt slow but real. During sophomore year, I got an email from Vanessa. My heart raced when I saw her name in my inbox. She wanted to meet for coffee during winter break. I almost deleted the message without responding. My thumb hovered over the screen for several minutes. I finally typed a short reply agreeing to meet. We chose a small cafe halfway between our hometowns. I arrived 20 minutes early out of nervousness. Vanessa walked in exactly on time. She looked different with shorter hair and glasses. We hugged awkwardly before sitting down. She ordered black coffee while I got tea. The first 10 minutes were filled with small talk. Then she pulled out a notebook from her bag. Vanessa had started a blog about teenage bullying. She wanted my perspective for an article she was writing. This wasn't what I expected from our meeting. She explained she was studying journalism now. Her professor encouraged students to write from personal experience. Vanessa chose to focus on bullying and reconciliation. I felt a lump form in my throat. She wasn't asking for forgiveness exactly. This felt like something more complicated. We spent 3 hours in that cafe sharing perspectives. I told her about my psychology studies and interest in trauma. She showed me comments from teen readers of her blog. Many found comfort in knowing others shared similar experiences. We recognized something important was happening between us. Our separate healing journeys had led to similar destinations. By spring semester, we were collaborating on a workshop series. Vanessa wrote compelling stories about bullying experiences. I provided psychological frameworks to understand them. We piloted the program at my university's Community Outreach Day. 15 high school students attended our first session. We shared our own story with minimal details. The focus stayed on prevention and healing strategies. 3 students approached us afterward with tears in their eyes. They recognized themselves in our narrative. One girl admitted to bullying others because of her home situation. A quiet boy revealed he'd been contemplating suicide from the isolation. The third student simply hugged us both before leaving. We knew we'd found our calling that day. I adjusted my psychology studies to focus on adolescent development. Vanessa transferred to a 4-year college with a strong communications program. We created a more formal curriculum for our workshops. A local school district invited us to present to their teachers. The superintendent attended our presentation about peer intervention. He asked us to develop a district-wide program for the following year. We were still undergraduates with limited experience. The opportunity terrified and excited us simultaneously. I spent that summer researching effective intervention models. Vanessa interviewed former bullies about their motivations and regrets. We rented a small apartment together to save money. Living together revealed new dimensions to our evolving friendship. Vanessa still organized everything with military precision. I still left dishes in the sink too long. We argued about small things but respected the bigger boundaries. Late nights were spent refining our program materials. We called it Full Circle, breaking the cycle of school bullying. The name represented our own journey and mission. By senior year, 3 school districts had implemented our program. Teachers reported noticeable improvements in school climate. Students had vocabulary to discuss difficult social dynamics. Incidents of severe bullying decreased by 30%. Administrators credited our personal story for the program's effectiveness. We graduated with job offers from an educational consulting firm. The company wanted to distribute our curriculum nationally. We signed a contract that included speaking engagements across the country. Our first presentation to a national conference was terrifying. I vomited twice before walking onto the stage. Vanessa squeezed my hand as we faced the audience of educators. We told our story more openly than ever before. I described finding the dead animal in my locker. Vanessa explained the hurt and rage that drove her actions. The room fell completely silent during these revelations. A standing ovation followed our presentation. Educators lined up to share their own experiences. Some admitted to overlooking bullying in their schools. Others had been victims themselves decades earlier. We realized the universality of our message that day. The work became our shared purpose over the next several years. We refined our approach based on feedback from schools. Research studies validated the effectiveness of our methods. I completed a master's degree in clinical psychology during this period. Vanessa published a book about youth resilience that became a bestseller. We were invited to consult with state education departments. Our small apartment upgraded to a comfortable house with separate offices. Success brought new challenges to our relationship. Media attention focused more on our personal reconciliation. Reporters asked invasive questions about our high school years. We developed standard responses that protected our privacy. Some interviews still left us us emotionally drained. We established strict boundaries around sharing our story. The educational content always remained the priority. 10 years after graduation, our old high school invited us back. They wanted us to keynote their new anti-bullying initiative. Returning to those hallways triggered unexpected emotions. I found myself standing before my old locker during the tour. The metal door had been replaced years ago. Still, I felt phantom smells from that horrible day. Vanessa noticed my discomfort and suggested we step outside. We sat on the same courtyard bench where she once tormented me. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The principal joined us with sincere appreciation for our program. He couldn't know the complex emotions swirling between us. That evening, we addressed the entire student body in the gymnasium. Faces of teenagers looked up with varying degrees of interest. I spotted the popular kids in their traditional territory. Vanessa recognized the isolated students at the margins. We told our story with renewed perspective from that significant location. The students sensed the authenticity in our presentation. They gave us their full attention throughout the assembly. Several approached us afterward with trembling voices. They recognized their own situations in our words. One boy admitted he'd been planning revenge against his tormentors. Our story made him reconsider his approach. A popular girl quietly asked how to stop her friend's mean behavior. The impact felt especially meaningful in our former school. We left the campus with a sense of closure neither expected. The work continued to evolve as social media transformed bullying. Online harassment created new challenges for students and educators. We incorporated digital citizenship into our curriculum. Research partnerships helped us stay relevant with changing technologies. Vanessa specialized in media literacy for teenagers and parents. I focused on psychological interventions for cyberbullying victims. Our professional success continued bringing new opportunities. A major foundation offered substantial funding to expand our reach. We created online training modules for schools with limited resources. International education organizations translated our materials into 12 languages. We traveled to conferences across 4 continents in 1 year. The intense schedule took a toll on our personal lives. I developed insomnia during particularly busy months. Vanessa struggled with anxiety before major presentations. We recognized the need for better self-care practices. Our shared history made us uniquely equipped to support each other. The wounds from our teenage years had mostly healed. Occasional triggers still appeared unexpectedly for both of us. I still flinched at certain locker room smells. Vanessa avoided particular hallway configurations in schools. We acknowledged these responses without shame. They became part of our teaching about trauma's lasting effects. Our 15th high school reunion arrived with mixed emotions. We debated whether to attend for several weeks. The event would attract people who witnessed our worst moments. Some might still carry outdated impressions of both of us. We finally decided to attend together as a unified front. The reunion was held at a hotel ballroom downtown. Former classmates approached us with curious expressions. Most had heard about our work through social media. They expressed surprise at our unlikely partnership. Old friend groups had evolved through marriages and career changes. The former hierarchy seemed laughably irrelevant now. I chatted with people who never spoke to me in high school. Vanessa apologized to several former targets of her mean behavior. Our former principal attended briefly to greet the alumni. He pulled us aside to express his regret about the past. He admitted failing to address the bullying culture properly. His acknowledgement meant more than expected to both of us. We left the reunion feeling another layer of healing. The next phase of our work focused on prevention with younger children. Elementary schools showed interest in age-appropriate materials. We developed puppet shows for kindergarten through 3rd grade. Stories about friendship and inclusion replaced our personal narrative. Colorful workbooks helped children practice social skills. Parent workshops addressed early intervention techniques. Teachers reported improved classroom dynamics within months. Our 20th year of collaboration brought an unexpected honor. A National Education Association named their Bullying Prevention Award after us. The ceremony included video testimonials from former workshop participants. Students we'd met years earlier described our program's lasting impact. Several had chosen helping professions because of our influence. One young woman had started a similar program at her university. We accepted the award with genuine humility and gratitude. The following day, Vanessa received difficult health news. Routine tests revealed concerning results requiring further examination. The diagnosis came 2 weeks later: stage 2 breast cancer. Treatment options included surgery and chemotherapy. I accompanied her to every medical appointment. Our speaking engagements were temporarily postponed. I handled administrative responsibilities for our organization. Colleagues stepped in to deliver scheduled workshops. Vanessa's treatment lasted 8 challenging months. She lost her hair and much of her energy. Still, she wrote from her treatment chair when possible. Her online journal about the experience reached new audiences. She connected her current battle with our anti-bullying message. Resilience became her central theme during recovery. My support role taught me new dimensions of our friendship. I organized meal deliveries and managed her medication schedule. We had movie marathons during her lowest energy days. Our shared history made certain conversations unnecessarily difficult. We already understood vulnerability and pain intimately. Her doctors declared her cancer-free after the final treatments. Recovery would continue for months with ongoing monitoring. We celebrated with a quiet dinner at her favorite restaurant. The experience shifted our perspective on our work again. Vanessa incorporated wellness themes into our curriculum updates. I developed modules addressing serious illness in school communities. Our personal experiences continued informing our professional approach. As our 3rd decade of collaboration approached, we reflected often. Our unlikely journey from enemies to partners still amazed us. The dead animal incident now seemed like another lifetime, yet it remained the catalyst for everything that followed. New generations of students heard versions of our story. The specific details mattered less than the transformation message. School administrators still credited our program's effectiveness to authenticity. We understood bullying from both perspectives intimately. Retirement discussions began as we approached our 50s. The organization had grown beyond our direct management. A talented team implemented programs across multiple countries. Succession planning became our priority for sustainability. We identified promising leaders from within our organization. Mentorship programs prepared them for eventual transition. We reduced our travel schedule to focus on writing comprehensive guides. Speaking engagements became more selective and strategic. The pandemic created unexpected challenges for our work. Schools closed and bullying moved entirely online. We quickly adapted materials for virtual learning environments. Teachers reported increasing concerns about digital harassment. Parents requested resources for monitoring online interactions. We conducted webinars reaching thousands of of families weekly. Our experience with adaptability served the organization well. Post-pandemic education brought renewed interest in social skills. Schools recognized the emotional impact of prolonged isolation. Our curriculum expanded to address re-entry anxiety and conflicts. Research partnerships studied effective interventions for this period. Demand for our services reached unprecedented levels nationally. Technology companies sought our expertise for platform safety. Government agencies consulted us about policy recommendations. Universities offered honorary degrees recognizing our contributions. The spotlight sometimes still felt uncomfortable for both of us. We remained focused on the work rather than accolades. As retirement approached, we collaborated on a comprehensive book. It documented 30 years of bullying prevention research. Our personal story served as the framework for broader insights. Former students contributed testimonials about lasting impact. Research data demonstrated effectiveness across diverse settings. The publishing date coincided with our planned retirement announcement. We organized a final conference to launch the book officially. Educators, researchers, and former students attended from globally. The event celebrated 3 decades of our unexpected partnership. Presentations highlighted the evolution of our approaches. Panel discussions featured the next generation of prevention specialists. We received a standing ovation during our closing remarks. Tears flowed freely as we reflected on our journey together. The dead rat that once represented hatred had transformed completely. It became the unexpected beginning of lifelong purpose for both. We had helped thousands of students avoid similar pain. Schools implemented lasting changes because of our experiences. The work would continue through others we had trained. Our personal healing had become completion in helping others. Retirement brought new routines and reflective conversations. We remained connected through the foundation bearing our names. Advisory roles kept us engaged with evolving prevention strategies. Occasional speaking engagements maintained our presence in the field. We finally had time to process our remarkable journey fully. The teenage girls who once occupied opposite social positions had disappeared. In their place stood 2 women transformed by shared purpose. Our unlikely friendship had become the most significant relationship for both. The healing journey that began with a dead animal had never really ended. It had simply evolved into different forms of growth and service. We recognized that pain could become purpose with proper perspective. Our story continued inspiring others facing similar challenges. Sometimes the most meaningful connections emerge from the deepest wounds. Vanessa and I embodied this truth through our unlikely partnership. The dead animal in my locker had ultimately given life to something beautiful that I never could have imagined when I first saw that bloody mess. Looking back now, it's almost funny how something so awful became life-changing. The day after we launched our community outreach program, local news picked up our story. I woke up to 17 text messages from people I hadn't talked to in years. My phone kept buzzing all morning with notifications. Vanessa called me around noon, her voice unusually excited. The segment had gone viral overnight on several platforms. We weren't prepared for the sudden attention at all. People wanted to know more about our journey from enemies to partners. Requests for interviews flooded our inboxes immediately. School administrators who once disciplined us now praised our initiative publicly. I felt uncomfortable with the spotlight at first. Vanessa adapted to it more naturally than I did. She handled most media interactions while I worked behind the scenes. Our first major event drew nearly 300 people to the community center. I stood backstage with sweaty palms and racing thoughts. The crowd seemed impossibly large from my vantage point. Vanessa nudged me forward when my feet refused to move. I somehow made it to the microphone without tripping. The words came easier than expected once I started speaking. I shared our story without sugarcoating the ugly parts. People nodded and some wiped away tears during certain moments. The applause afterward felt surreal and slightly uncomfortable. We raised enough money that night to fund our program for 6 months. Local businesses started reaching out with partnership offers the next day. A regional mental health organization wanted us as featured speakers at their conference. The momentum built faster than we could manage properly. Vanessa suggested we needed help handling the administrative aspects. We hired a part-time coordinator using some of the donation money. Things became more structured and less chaotic within weeks. Our weekly support groups expanded to 3 different locations across town. The school board invited us to implement our program district-wide the following semester. I still occasionally had nightmares about finding that dead rabbit. The smell would return vividly in my dreams sometimes. Vanessa admitted she still felt shame about her role in the incident. We incorporated these ongoing struggles into our presentations honestly. People seemed to appreciate our candor about the healing process. Not everything gets fixed neatly like in movies or books. The messy reality resonated with audiences more powerfully. Summer approached with new opportunities and challenges for our work. I graduated with my counseling certification that May. Vanessa received acceptance to her top choice graduate program across the country. Our paths would physically diverge for the first time since forming our partnership. We spent weeks creating contingency plans for the organization. The distance would test everything we'd built together over the years. I felt anxious about continuing without her physical presence. Technology would bridge the gap, but things would inevitably change. The last event before her departure drew our biggest crowd yet. Community leaders and officials attended in surprising numbers. The mayor presented us with a Civic Achievement Award during the ceremony. Cameras flashed continuously throughout the evening from various media outlets. I hugged Vanessa goodbye at the airport the following week. Words felt inadequate in that moment between us. She promised to call as soon as she landed safely. I drove home in silence, feeling strangely hollow despite our success. Running things alone proved harder than anticipated those first few months. Attendance numbers dropped slightly without Vanessa's magnetic presence. I struggled with some administrative decisions without her input. The coordinator we hired became increasingly valuable during this transition. She suggested expanding our online presence to maintain momentum. We launched virtual support groups to complement the in-person sessions. Participation numbers slowly rebounded by late autumn. Vanessa joined our major events via video call whenever possible. Her insights from her graduate studies enhanced our program substantially. I visited her during winter break to collaborate on our 5-year strategic plan. The organization had grown beyond anything we'd initially imagined. Corporate sponsors had begun providing significant financial support. Local government included included our initiative in their community wellness budget. My small apartment had become our unofficial headquarters by necessity. Papers and promotional materials covered every available surface. I rarely used my kitchen table for actual meals anymore. The doorbell rang constantly with deliveries and volunteer check-ins. Spring brought unexpected recognition from a National Mental Health Foundation. They selected our program for their annual Innovation Award. The prize included substantial funding and implementation resources. Vanessa flew back for the ceremony despite her heavy course load. Seeing her walk through the airport terminal lifted my spirits instantly. We stayed up all night catching up and planning future expansions. The award ceremony itself passed in a blur of handshakes. I remembered very little of my acceptance speech afterward. Photos from the event showed me looking simultaneously terrified and thrilled. Vanessa appeared poised and professional beside me in every shot. National attention brought both opportunities and new pressures. Other communities requested information about replicating our model. We created standardized materials to share with interested organizations. Our inbox remained perpetually full despite hiring additional help. The workload threatened to become overwhelming at times. I developed insomnia from the constant mental checklists. Vanessa noticed my exhaustion during our weekly video meetings. She insisted I establish better boundaries between work and personal life. Taking her advice, I designated Sundays as completely work-free days. My mental health improved noticeably within a few weeks. The organization continued functioning without my constant attention. This realization felt both relieving and slightly deflating to my ego. Vanessa completed her first year of graduate studies with honors. She incorporated our work into several of her research projects. Her professors expressed interest in formally studying our program's outcomes. This academic validation added credibility to our experiential approach. Summer brought Vanessa back temporarily to help expand operations. We moved into proper office space downtown that June. Unpacking boxes and arranging furniture felt symbolic somehow. What began as two hurt people finding healing had become something substantial. Volunteers streamed in and out of our new headquarters daily. The community claimed ownership of the mission in beautiful ways. Local artists donated work for our walls featuring themes of healing. The mayor cut a ribbon at our official grand opening ceremony. Nearly 500 people attended despite the scorching summer heat. I barely recognized our own creation in those moments. The fall marked 3 years since that dead rabbit appeared. Vanessa returned to complete her final year of graduate study. I committed to expanding our preventative education components. We developed age-appropriate materials for elementary schools. Teachers reported noticeable improvements in classroom dynamics. Children embraced the concepts with less resistance than adults typically showed. My weekly visits to schools became the highlight of my schedule. Watching young minds grasp emotional intelligence concepts felt rewarding. These kids would hopefully avoid the mistakes Vanessa and I made. Prevention seemed infinitely more effective than intervention after damage. Winter arrived with an unexpected opportunity for national exposure. A documentary filmmaker contacted us about featuring our story. Initial interviews stretched over several snowy December days. The filmmaker captured footage of our various programs in action. Vanessa participated remotely through recorded video sessions. Revisiting the painful beginning felt strangely distant now. I could describe finding the rabbit without my heart racing anymore. The crew filmed at our old high school with administrative permission. Standing by that same locker stirred unexpected emotions in me. The hallway looked smaller than it did in my memories. Current students passed by, unaware of what happened there. The filming process forced reflection on our complete journey. I recognized patterns and turning points previously missed. The documentary premiered at a regional film festival that spring. Seeing our story through someone else's artistic lens felt surreal. Audience members approached us afterward with tears and thanks. Many shared their own experiences with bullying and reconciliation. The film won an Audience Choice Award at the festival. Several streaming services expressed interest in distribution rights. Vanessa graduated with her master's degree the following month. She returned with new qualifications and expanded vision for our work. We celebrated her achievement with a small gathering of supporters. The organization had become sustainable enough to hire her full-time. Having her back permanently changed the energy immediately. Our brainstorming sessions regained their former creative spark. Summer marked the beginning of our nationwide expansion efforts. We traveled to 3 pilot cities to train local implementation teams. Each community adapted our framework to their specific needs. I discovered I actually enjoyed the consulting aspects of expansion. Vanessa excelled at troubleshooting unique community challenges. We returned home exhausted but fulfilled after each training session. Fall brought an invitation to present at an international conference. The prospect of sharing our model globally both excited and terrified us. We spent weeks preparing materials for international adaptation. Cultural considerations required significant research and consultation. The conference itself attracted delegates from 47 countries. Our presentation room filled to capacity 15 minutes early. Attendees stood along walls and sat in aisles to participate. The response exceeded anything we could have anticipated. Representatives from 12 countries requested follow-up consultations immediately. We returned home with a fundamentally expanded perspective on our work. Local initiatives continued thriving under our team's capable management. The documentary released on a major streaming platform that winter. Viewership numbers exceeded the distributor's projections significantly. Messages poured in from viewers around the country and beyond. Many described watching our story multiple times for inspiration. Schools began using the documentary as a teaching tool. Our website crashed briefly from the sudden traffic increase. The small tech team scrambled to upgrade our digital infrastructure. Media requests required us to hire a dedicated communications person. I sometimes barely recognized my own life during this period. The scared, angry teenager from years ago seemed like someone else. Vanessa and I occasionally reminded each other where we started. Our 5th anniversary celebration drew attention from national media outlets. The governor presented us with a Humanitarian Service Award. Former bullies and victims from our school attended in surprising numbers. Many had found their own healing through our programs over years. The dead rabbit story had become almost mythological in retelling, yet the core truth of transformation remained undeniably powerful. Spring brought a publishing offer for a book about our journey. We approached the writing process as another form of therapy. Revisiting certain memories required significant emotional energy from both of us. Vanessa struggled to articulate her perspective on the bullying period. I found it difficult to describe my darkest thoughts from that time. Our editor pushed us toward complete honesty throughout the process. The manuscript underwent 12 revisions before before completion. Advanced reviews praised the book's unflinching authenticity. Summer release plans included a limited speaking tour. Book signings and interviews consumed much of that season. Readers shared how our story helped them forgive themselves or others. Parents brought teenagers who reminded us of our younger selves. I often thought about how different life might have been. That dead rabbit could have easily led to escalating revenge. Instead, it somehow became the catalyst for healing and purpose. The book reached bestseller status by mid-autumn. Universities added it to courses on conflict resolution. Corporate training programs incorporated our reconciliation model. Translation rights sold to publishers in 14 countries. Vanessa proposed using proceeds to establish a scholarship foundation. We created opportunities for students committed to community healing. The 10th anniversary of the rabbit incident approached unbelievably fast. We organized a special conference focused on long-term transformation. Former participants from our earliest programs returned as presenters. Success stories demonstrated the lasting impact of genuine reconciliation. I sometimes caught myself watching Vanessa during these events. Her evolution from insecure bully to compassionate leader amazed me. She said she felt the same watching my journey unfold. We both acknowledged how unlikely our partnership would have seemed. The universe had strange ways of creating purpose from pain. The anniversary conference exceeded our expectations in every way. Over 1,000 attendees participated from across the country. Implementation teams from 6 countries joined to share their experiences. Academic researchers presented preliminary findings on program effectiveness. Government representatives discussed policy implications of our approach. The final day featured a special ceremony honoring key contributors. Vanessa and I received matching crystal awards for our founding work. We shared knowing glances during the standing ovation that followed. Words could never fully capture what had transpired between us. The dead rabbit that once represented hatred had transformed completely. It now symbolized the possibility of healing from the deepest wounds. Our personal journeys continued alongside the organizational growth. I eventually completed my doctorate in psychological counseling. Vanessa developed specialized programs for corporate environment healing. We both taught university courses on conflict transformation occasionally. Neither of us had anticipated becoming recognized experts in reconciliation. Life continued presenting new challenges and opportunities for growth. The organization evolved beyond its founders in healthy ways. Capable leaders emerged from participants in our early programs. Our role shifted gradually toward advisory rather than operational. This transition allowed us to pursue other aspects of healing work. International interest continued expanding through our second decade. I traveled to conferences in Europe, Asia, and South America. Vanessa developed training materials adapted for various cultural contexts. We documented our methodology through academic and practical publications. Universities in several countries established research partnerships with us. The work evolved far beyond our initial vision or capacity. I sometimes found myself watching videos from our earliest days. The contrast between then and now always struck me forcefully. Vanessa and I occasionally reminisced about our humble beginnings. The cramped community center rooms with folding chairs seemed quaint now, yet something essential remained consistent through all changes. The healing principles worked because they were fundamentally human. Pain, accountability, forgiveness, and growth transcended all boundaries. Looking back over 15 years from that locker incident seemed surreal. The terrified, rage-filled teenager I once was felt like another person. Vanessa said she barely recognized her former self in memories. We had both been transformed through the very process we taught. The dead rabbit had somehow multiplied life rather than ending it. One random act of cruelty had spawned countless acts of healing. Neither of us could have imagined this outcome that terrible morning. I sometimes wondered about alternate timelines where we made different choices. What if I had retaliated instead of seeking understanding? What if Vanessa had denied responsibility instead of acknowledging harm? What if we had never discovered the healing possible through honesty? These questions had no answers but prompted continued gratitude. The journey remained ongoing despite our substantial progress. Neither of us claimed to have perfected the healing process. We still encountered triggers that connected to our original wounds. The difference lay in our response to these inevitable human moments. We had developed tools to process pain without creating more damage. These skills proved relevant across all life's relationships and challenges. The dead rabbit story continued teaching us decades after the fact. Its lessons evolved as we gained new perspectives through experience. What began as a trauma became a strange gift over time. This realization formed the core message of all our work. Pain itself wasn't transformative, but our response to it could be. Choosing growth over revenge created entirely different life trajectories. The organization now operated in 37 countries on 6 continents. Research consistently validated the effectiveness of our methodologies. Schools, businesses, and communities reported measurable positive outcomes. Government agencies incorporated our approaches into policy frameworks. None of this seemed possible when I first opened that locker. The stench of death had somehow led to abundant new life. 20 years after the incident, we held a special private commemoration. Just Vanessa and I, sitting quietly in a garden behind our headquarters. No speeches, cameras, or audiences for this particular milestone. We simply acknowledged the journey with its pain and beauty. I thanked her for having the courage to seek reconciliation. She thanked me for being willing to listen during our darkest time. We sat in comfortable silence, watching butterflies visit nearby flowers. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of us in that peaceful moment. Transformation remained mysterious even after dedicating our lives to it. The dead rabbit had decomposed decades ago, returning to Earth. Its spiritual significance, however, continued generating new growth. Our story had become larger than ourselves or our organization. It belonged to everyone who found hope through its telling. The healing work continued beyond any single moment or milestone. Pain and opportunity for transformation remained constants in human experience. Our mission evolved but never really changed at its core. We helped people find purpose through their deepest wounds. The rabbit that once represented hatred ultimately gave birth to compassion. Sometimes I still paused by old school lockers when visiting campuses. These metal containers seemed such ordinary objects to contain such power. One locker had somehow altered the trajectory of countless lives. I would touch the cool metal surface briefly, honoring the journey. Vanessa once confessed she did the same thing during school visits. These These private rituals acknowledged the significance of our unlikely beginning. The dead animal in my locker had ultimately given life to something beautiful. That beauty continued spreading in ways we could never fully track. The ripple effects extended far beyond our vision or understanding. Healing moved outward like rings in water, touching distant shores. The rabbit's death had somehow initiated endless new beginnings.